Hey there, welcome back to Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. I never thought I'd find myself in the middle of a legal battle with my neighborhood's homeowners association. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. My name's Mike, and for the past 5 years, I've been running a successful small landscaping business out of my home in Sunnyside Estates, a quiet suburban community on the outskirts of Denver. It all started on a crisp autumn morning when I was loading up my truck for a day's work. I had a string of appointments lined up, and I was looking forward to a productive day. As I was securing my equipment in the back of my pickup, I noticed a group of people walking purposefully towards my house. At first, I didn't think much of it. Neighbors often stopped by to chat or ask for gardening advice. But as they got closer, I realized this wasn't a friendly visit. Leading the pack was Sandra Thompson, the president of our Homeowners Association board. She was flanked by 2 other board members, and trailing behind them was a man I didn't recognize, carrying what looked like official documents. "Good morning, Mike," Sandra said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We need to have a word with you about your business operations." I felt a knot form in my stomach. I'd always been on good terms with the Homeowners Association, or so I thought. I made sure to keep my property in top shape, and I was careful not to disturb the neighbors with my work. "Sure, Sandra," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "What seems to be the problem?" Sandra's fake smile vanished, replaced by a look of stern disapproval. "The problem, Mike, is that you're operating a commercial business in a residential area. That's a clear violation of our Homeowners Association rules." I blinked in surprise, but I've been running my business from home for years without any issues. I thought it was allowed as long as it didn't disrupt the neighborhood. "Well, you thought wrong," Sandra snapped. "We've received numerous complaints about the noise, the unsightly equipment in your driveway, and the constant stream of work vehicles coming and going. It's time we put a stop to it." I felt my face flush with anger. "Complaints? From who? I've never heard a single complaint from any of my neighbors. In fact, most of them are my clients." Sandra waved her hand dismissively. "That's confidential information. The point is, you're in violation of our rules, and we're here to enforce them." That's when the man I didn't recognize stepped forward. "Mr. Johnson, I'm here to serve you with a cease and desist order," he said, handing me a thick envelope. "You have 48 hours to cease all business operations from your home address." I stared at the envelope in disbelief. "This is ridiculous. You can't just shut down my business like this. I have rights." "Your rights end where our Homeowners Association rules begin," Sandra said smugly. "If you don't comply, we'll be forced to take further action." With that, they turned and walked away, leaving me standing in my driveway, clutching the cease and desist order and feeling like the ground had just been pulled out from under me. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, going through the motions of my work while my mind raced with worry and anger. How could they do this? I'd built this business from the ground up, pouring my heart and soul into it. And now, with a single piece of paper, they were threatening to take it all away. That evening, after I'd finished my last job, I sat down at my kitchen table and opened the envelope. As I read through the dense legal jargon, my confusion turned to outrage. The document was full of vague accusations and dubious claims about my business violating various Homeowners Association bylaws. But what really caught my eye was a clause near the end. "Failure to comply with this cease and desist order within 48 hours will result in the immediate seizure of all business-related equipment and vehicles located on the property." I couldn't believe what I was reading. They were threatening to take my tools, my truck, everything I needed to run my business. This wasn't just about stopping me from working from home. They were trying to destroy my livelihood completely. I knew I needed help, and fast. I called my friend Tom, who happened to be a lawyer specializing in property disputes. "Tom, I need your help," I said as soon as he picked up. "The Homeowners Association is trying to shut down my business and seize my equipment. Can they really do that?" Tom listened patiently as I explained the situation, occasionally asking for clarification. When I finished, he let out a long whistle. "Mike, what they're doing is not just unethical. It's probably illegal," Tom said. "Homeowners associations have a lot of power, but they can't just seize your personal property like that. And if you've been operating your business without issues for years, they can't suddenly decide to enforce a rule they've been ignoring." I felt a glimmer of hope. "So what should I do?" "First things first, don't comply with their cease and desist order," Tom advised. "That could be seen as an admission of wrongdoing. Instead, we're going to fight back. I'll draft a response letter asserting your rights and demanding they rescind their order. In the meantime, document everything. If they try to seize your property, call the police immediately." I thanked Tom profusely and hung up, feeling a bit more confident. But I knew this fight was far from over. The next morning, I woke up early and set up a security camera overlooking my driveway. If the Homeowners Association tried anything, I wanted it on record. I also started calling my neighbors, explaining the situation and asking if they had indeed complained about my business. To my relief, not a single neighbor admitted to complaining. In fact, most were shocked and angry on my behalf. "Mike, your business has never been a problem for us," said Mrs. Johnson, my elderly neighbor from across the street. "In fact, we love having you around. You keep our neighborhood looking beautiful, and you're always there to help when we need it. As the 48-hour deadline approached, I grew increasingly anxious. Tom had sent the response letter, forcefully arguing that the Homeowners Association's actions were unauthorized and potentially illegal. But we hadn't heard anything back. On the morning of the third day, I was on edge, half expecting Sandra and her cronies to show up with a moving truck. But as the hours ticked by, nothing happened. I started to wonder if maybe they had backed down. That hope was shattered when I returned home from a job that afternoon. As I turned onto my street, my heart sank. There, parked in front of my house, was a large moving truck. Sandra and several other Homeowners Association board members were standing in my driveway, directing a group of men who were loading my equipment into the truck. I slammed on the brakes and jumped out of my truck, my blood boiling. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I shouted as I ran towards them. Sandra turned to me with a look of smug satisfaction. "We warned you what would happen if you didn't comply, Mike. You've left us no choice but to take matters into our own hands." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "This is illegal. You have no right to take my property." "We have every right," Sandra retorted. "It's all in the Homeowners Association bylaws. You agreed to abide by our rules when you moved in." As I argued with Sandra, I noticed one of the men trying to hook my work truck up to a tow truck. I rushed over, placing myself between them and my vehicle. "Don't you dare touch my truck," I growled. "I'm calling the police right now." Sandra laughed. "Go ahead. They can't do anything. This is a civil matter." But I was already dialing cop. As I waited for the operator to pick up, I saw my neighbors starting to gather, drawn by the commotion. Many of them looked shocked and angry at what they were witnessing. "Cop, what's your emergency?" came the operator's voice. "I need police assistance immediately," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm at 1234 Sunnyside Drive. My Homeowners Association is illegally seizing my property. They're loading my equipment into a truck and trying to tow my vehicle." "Sir, are you in any physical danger?" the operator asked. "No, but they're stealing my livelihood," I replied. "Please, I need help." "All right, sir. We're dispatching officers to your location now. Please try to remain calm and avoid any physical confrontation." As I hung up, I saw Mrs. Johnson approaching Sandra, her face red with anger. "Sandra Thompson, what in God's name do you think you're doing?" she demanded. "Mike's business has been nothing but a blessing to this neighborhood. You have no right to do this." Other neighbors joined in, voicing their support for me and their disgust at the Homeowners Association's actions. Sandra and the other board members started to look uncomfortable as they realized they didn't have the neighborhood's backing. About 10 minutes later, which felt like an eternity, 2 police cruisers pulled up. The officers quickly assessed the situation, separating me and the Homeowners Association members. "All right, everyone calm down," one of the officers said. "Can someone explain what's going on here?" Sandra stepped forward, attempting to regain her authoritative demeanor. "Officer, we're simply enforcing our Homeowners Association rules. This man has been running an illegal business from his home, and we're confiscating his equipment as per our bylaws." I jumped in before she could say more. "That's not true, officer. I've been running my landscaping business from home for years without any issues. They suddenly decided to enforce a rule they've been ignoring, and now they're trying to steal my property." The officer turned to Sandra. "Ma'am, do you have a court order allowing you to seize this man's property?" Sandra hesitated. "Well, no, but our Homeowners Association bylaws clearly state." "I'm going to stop you right there," the officer interrupted. "Without a court order, you have no legal right to seize anyone's property, regardless of what your Homeowners Association bylaws say. This is theft, plain and simple." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The officer turned to me. "Sir, do you want to press charges?" I looked at Sandra and the other board members, who now looked pale and scared. Part of me wanted to say yes to see them hauled off in handcuffs, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything in the long run. "Not at this time, officer," I said, "but I do want all of my property returned immediately, and I want it on record that they attempted to illegally seize my belongings." The officer nodded. "All right, folks," he announced to the Homeowners Association members. "You heard the man. Return everything you've taken, and I mean everything. If I find out you've kept so much as a screwdriver, you'll be facing theft charges." Under the watchful eyes of the police and my neighbors, Sandra and her team begrudgingly unloaded my equipment from the truck. As they worked, I could hear my neighbors muttering angrily about the Homeowners Association's actions. Once everything was back in place, the officers took statements from me and several witnesses. They warned the Homeowners Association members about the consequences of attempting something like this again before finally leaving. As the excitement died down and my neighbors dispersed, I was left standing in my driveway, surrounded by my hastily returned equipment. I felt drained but also determined. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. With Tom's help, I filed a lawsuit against the Homeowners Association for harassment, attempted theft, and violation of my property rights. We also filed complaints with the State Attorney General's office, alleging that the Homeowners Association had overstepped its authority and violated state laws governing homeowners associations. As news of the incident spread through the neighborhood, more and more of my neighbors came forward with their own stories of the homeowners association's heavy-handed tactics and questionable practices. It seemed that Sandra and her board had been ruling our community like petty tyrants for years, using threats and intimidation to get their way. One neighbor, a retired accountant named Bill, offered to look over the homeowners association's financial records. What he found was shocking. There were unexplained expenses, missing funds, and evidence of board members using homeowners association money for personal purchases. "Mike, this goes way beyond just harassing you," Bill told me one evening as we pored over the documents. "They've been embezzling funds for years. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars." I shook my head in disbelief. How did they think they'd get away with this? Bill shrugged. "Most people don't pay much attention to homeowners association finances. They just pay their dues and trust that everything's being managed properly. But in this case, that trust was severely misplaced." Armed with this new information, we expanded our lawsuit and brought in forensic accountants to dig deeper into the homeowners association's finances. The more we uncovered, the worse it looked for Sandra and her cronies. As the legal proceedings moved forward, life in Sunnyside Estates changed dramatically. The existing Homeowners Association Board was suspended pending the outcome of the investigation, and a temporary board was appointed to handle day-to-day operations. Meanwhile, I continued to run my business, now with the full support of my neighbors. Many of them went out of their way to hire me for jobs or recommend me to friends, wanting to show their support after what I'd been through. The lawsuit dragged on for months, with Sandra and the other board members fighting tooth and nail to avoid accountability. But as the evidence mounted against them, their defenses began to crumble. Finally, nearly a year after that fateful day when they tried to seize my equipment, we had our day in court. The courtroom was packed with my neighbors, all eager to see justice served. As the judge read out his verdict, I felt a mix of relief and vindication wash over me. In the matter of Johnson versus Sunnyside Estates Homeowners Association, the judge began, "This court finds in favor of the plaintiff. The actions of the Homeowners Association Board were not only in violation of their own bylaws, but also state and federal laws." He went on to detail the numerous infractions, from the illegal attempt to seize my property to the years of financial mismanagement and embezzlement. The judge ordered the Homeowners Association to pay substantial damages to me and other affected homeowners, and he referred the matter of the embezzled funds to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. As we left the courthouse, I was surrounded by cheering neighbors. Mrs. Johnson pulled me into a tight hug. "You did it, Mike," she said, her eyes shining with tears. "You stood up to them and won. We're all so proud of you." I felt overwhelmed by their support and gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without all of you," I said. "This victory belongs to all of us." In the weeks that followed, the fallout from the lawsuit continued. Sandra and several other board members were arrested on charges of embezzlement and fraud. The sight of them being led away in handcuffs was something I never thought I'd see, but it brought a sense of closure to the whole ordeal. With the old guard gone, we held new elections for the Homeowners Association Board. This time, people were paying attention. The new board members were chosen carefully, with an emphasis on transparency and fairness. I was even asked to run, but I declined, preferring to focus on my business. As for my landscaping company, it thrived in the aftermath of the lawsuit. My story had made local news, and I found myself with more work than I could handle. I ended up hiring a couple of employees to keep up with demand. Looking back on everything that happened, I realize how close I came to losing everything I'd worked for. If I hadn't stood up to the Homeowners Association, if my neighbors hadn't rallied around me, things could have turned out very differently. The experience taught me the importance of knowing your rights and being willing to fight for them. It also showed me the power of community. When we stand together against injustice, we can accomplish amazing things. Now, as I drive through Sunnyside Estates on my way to a job, I feel a sense of pride, not just in my thriving business, but in the community we've built. We're more than just neighbors now. We're a united front, ready to stand up for what's right. The Homeowners Association still exists, but it's a far cry from the oppressive regime it once was. Now it truly serves the community, fostering a spirit of cooperation rather than fear and intimidation. And every time I see a landscaping by Mike sign in someone's yard, I'm reminded of the battle we fought and won together. As for Sandra and her accomplices, they're facing years in prison for their crimes. It's a harsh punishment, but one that fits the years of abuse and fraud they perpetrated on our community. Their downfall serves as a powerful reminder that no one is above the law, not even those who claim to enforce the rules. In the end, what started as a nightmare, the potential loss of my business and property, turned into a catalyst for positive change in our community. It wasn't an easy journey, but it was one worth taking. And if there's one lesson I hope others can take from my experience, it's this: never be afraid to stand up for what's right, even when the odds seem stacked against you. You might just find that you're not standing alone. Update. It's been 2 years since the court ruling that turned our neighborhood upside down, and I'm happy to say that things have settled into a new, much better normal here in Sunnyside Estates. The criminal trial for Sandra and the other former Homeowners Association board members wrapped up about 6 months ago. It was a long, drawn-out process, but in the end, justice was served. Sandra was sentenced to 5 years in prison for embezzlement and fraud, while her main accomplices got sentences ranging from 2 to 4 years. A couple of the less involved board members got probation and hefty fines. I attended most of the trial, partly out of a sense of obligation to see it through, and partly because I wanted to make sure they didn't try to pin any blame on me or the other homeowners. It was tough at times, listening to their lawyers try to justify their actions or minimize their crimes, but the evidence was overwhelming, thanks in large part to Bill's initial discovery and the work of the forensic accountants. The day the verdicts were read, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. As I watched Sandra being led away in handcuffs, her face pale and defeated, I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. Instead, I just felt relieved that it was over and that our community could finally move on. And move on we did. The new Homeowners Association board, elected after the scandal, has been a breath of fresh air. They've implemented a ton of new policies to ensure transparency and prevent any future abuses of power. All financial records are now easily accessible to homeowners, and major decisions require community-wide votes. Tom, my lawyer friend who helped me through the initial battle, was elected as the new Homeowners Association president. He's done an amazing job of rebuilding trust and turning the Homeowners Association into what it should have been all along, an organization that serves the community rather than ruling over it. As for me, my landscaping business has been booming. The publicity from the case brought in a lot of new clients, not just from our neighborhood but from all over the city. I've had to hire 5 full-time employees to keep up with the demand, and I'm even thinking about expanding into hardscaping and water features. But the best part? I've been able to use my success to give back to the community that stood by me. I started a program where I offer free landscaping services to elderly or disabled residents in Sunnyside Estates. It's not much, but it's my way of saying thank you to the neighbors who had my back when I needed it most. Last month, we had a neighborhood barbecue to celebrate the 2-year anniversary of the court ruling. As I looked around at all the smiling faces, kids playing, and neighbors chatting, I couldn't help but feel proud of how far we've come. Mrs. Johnson, who's become something of a surrogate grandmother to me since all this happened, came up and gave me a hug. "You know, Mike," she said, her eyes twinkling, "I always knew you were a good boy, but I never realized you were such a fighter. You've done this community a great service." I felt myself blush a little. "I just did what anyone would do," I replied. She shook her head. "No, not anyone. It takes courage to stand up to bullies, especially when they hold power over you. You should be proud of yourself." And you know what? I am proud, not just of myself, but of our whole community. We faced a tough situation and came out stronger for it. Of course, it hasn't all been smooth sailing. There have been some challenges along the way. About a year ago, a few homeowners who were close to Sandra and the old board tried to stir up trouble. They started spreading rumors that the new board was just as corrupt, and that I had somehow orchestrated the whole thing to take control of the Homeowners Association. For a moment, I was worried that we might be heading for another confrontation. But this time, I didn't have to face it alone. Tom and the new board addressed the accusations head-on, holding a community meeting where they presented all the evidence of the old board's wrongdoing and explained in detail how the new systems of checks and balances work. The meeting lasted for hours, with everyone getting a chance to voice their concerns. In the end, even the skeptics had to admit that things were being run more fairly and transparently than ever before. One of Sandra's old friends, a woman named Karen who had been particularly vocal in her criticism, approached me after the meeting. "I owe you an apology, Mike," she said, looking uncomfortable but determined. I didn't want to believe that Sandra could have done those things. She was my friend, and I guess I was in denial. But after seeing all the evidence, well, I was wrong about you and about what happened. I'm sorry. I appreciated her honesty. "Thanks, Karen," I said. "I know it wasn't easy for anyone. But we're all neighbors, and we need to be able to move past this and work together." She nodded, and from that day on, she became one of the most active volunteers in our community events. Speaking of community events, that's been another big change since the new board took over. We now have regular gatherings, not just the annual barbecue, but also holiday parties, cleanup days, and even a small farmers market in the summer where residents can sell homegrown produce or handmade crafts. These events have brought us all closer together. People who used to just nod at each other while getting the mail are now friends who look out for each other. When Bill had a heart attack last winter, the whole neighborhood rallied around his family, taking turns bringing meals and helping with yard work until he recovered. As for the legal aftermath, the civil case dragged on a bit longer than the criminal one. Sandra and the others tried to appeal the decision, but the higher court upheld the original ruling. In the end, we were awarded a substantial sum in damages, which was divided among all the homeowners who had been affected by the Homeowners Association's illegal actions over the years. Most people use their share to pay off some of the unjust fines they've been hit with, or to make improvements to their homes. I decided to put most of mine back into the business, buying some new equipment that's allowed me to take on bigger projects. But I also set aside a portion to start a small scholarship fund for kids in our neighborhood who want to study horticulture or environmental science. It's not much, but I like the idea of helping nurture the next generation of people who care about making the world a little more beautiful. Last week, I got a letter from Sandra. At first, I was tempted to throw it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside, I found a handwritten apology. She wrote about how she had a lot of time to think in prison, and how she realized the harm she had caused to me and the whole community. She asked for forgiveness. I'm still not sure how I feel about it. On one hand, I appreciate that she took responsibility for her actions. On the other, it doesn't undo the stress and anxiety she put me through. I haven't decided if I'll write back yet, but I'm leaning towards it. Not to say I forgive her, but to let her know that despite her best efforts, our community is stronger than ever. As I sit here on my front porch, watching the sun set over the neatly manicured lawns of Sunnyside Estates, I can't help but feel grateful. Grateful for the neighbors who stood by me, for the justice system that worked as it should, and even, in a weird way, for Sandra and her cronies. Their actions, as terrible as they were, led to positive changes that none of us could have imagined. I learned a lot through this whole ordeal. I learned about the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it's scary. I learned that there's strength in community, and that when people come together, they can overcome almost anything. And I learned that sometimes, the worst situations can lead to the best outcomes, if you're willing to fight for them. Tomorrow, I'll wake up early, load up my truck, and head out to make people's yards a little more beautiful. But I'll do it knowing that I'm part of something bigger, a community that faced adversity and came out stronger, more united, and more determined to look out for each other. And you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.